All right.
Hello,
That's
hello.
good.
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. I'm doing fantastic. Corey, do you want to just turn your camera the other way? Perfect.
There you go.
Right on. So, this is RoseNthorn Talk, episode 2. I'm your host, Aaron Marshall Clark, AMC for short. And today I have a special guest, film director extraordinaire, Troy Dawes. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers, grandmothers, great grandmothers out there. Your special, very special day. And I'm glad we're able to bring some entertainment and some enlightenment for you all today as well. So, Troy and I actually met a few months ago on set. We were on a set for a movie, short film that is, called The Button Lady. And I had a leading role in that film and met Troy on set. We started chatting and found out that he's not only an aspiring but a very determined, enlightened film director. It's not just a pipe dream. This is a reality for him. And we clicked on that. And here we are today to talk more about his career paths, his goals, aspirations, all that fun stuff. So again, Troy, thanks for being the guest today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. That's so nice of you. Uh,
You're welcome.
I'm definitely gonna shout out my mom. I got her a bottle of wine today, so we're gonna have some nice meals today. My brother's coming over. He just moved out recently, so it
Okay.
kind of hurt. We've been brothers for 27 years. We've been in the same house, so I helped him
Right.
move out. So it's nice to see his face again. I can't wait to see him again. So yeah, today's gonna be a good day.
That was amazing. And thanks for sharing that. And throughout the broadcast, please feel free to make mention of any resources, any folks you want to acknowledge. That's what you're here for as well, to spread the good word about their talents as well. So, that being said, tell me a little bit about film directing. Tell me about your inspiration to become a
Sure.
director.
Um, so I guess my inspirations really come down to what's important to me at that point in my life.
Right?
Um, I learned from my mentors to really be aware of my surroundings. I'm going to shout out another guy, Mandeep Sodhi. Uh, he really sat me down and he said, sometimes I'll just sit on a bench and I'll look around and maybe someone's having a picnic and I read their faces. I'm trying to figure out what they're talking about, how they're feeling.
Right.
And sometimes I'll imagine a scene and right, maybe I'll stand up and start framing it. And
Good.
that gives them some great ideas. So I kind of took some aspiration from that and I decided to kind of watch some videos, see what other filmmakers do. When I was a young fella, I used to literally record whatever I found interesting. Sometimes it would be a rock and there was some light shining on it, and I go,
Okay.
maybe I can make something interesting from that. It's just being aware of my surroundings and finding the creative perspective on them and trying to make them interesting.
How did your imagination play into all of this?
I would say I'm kind of in vein of what Peter Jackson is like, where I try to be as dynamic with whatever I'm seeing. So I try to take basic ideas and spin them into something very interesting. Uh, for an example, I was talking about an anthology series I wanted to make with one of my friends, and I really had to figure out how could I make this something of my own? How could I really take my imagination and bring something of interest out of this? And
Right.
I call it Trinity. And I had it where it's 3 episodes that were 3 minutes long, and they were different genres, and they had different color schemes, and they were kind of unique of their own. And they were kind of similar in the way that maybe you have blue, green, and red, and each of them are like horror, a drama, or a melodrama, or a comedy. And I wanted to kind of break it apart and find some interests in all of those. I really
Mhm.
found that if you put some sort of limit on yourself, you can bring out the best in it. I feel like limitations or I guess rules to follow help guide you and narrow down whatever you're trying to tell into the best and most specific way possible. Because I feel like if you're very vague, you leave your audience with a lot of questions and it's very unsatisfying, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. Now, is that hands-on experience that you speak from that context, or is it a combination of theory, like school theory, film theory, and let's say work experience?
A bit of all of it. I would definitely say I'm leaning more into theory now.
Okay.
When I was a young fella, I had nothing to relay off of.
Right.
But now I've been reading a lot more, like Save the Cat. I've been reading about screenwriting.
Okay.
And through that, I feel like I'm able to breadcrumb my way into the next idea that I could not have spawned before. I feel
Right.
like your imagination's limited to what you're exposed to. So I'm lucky enough to be constantly working on union sets or non-union sets and being exposed to different worlds. I feel like they're completely different working conditions, and you really get to see what limitations are put on set. Um, I feel like indie productions are excellent because they're free spirited and you can honestly do whatever you want for the most part, as long as it's legal and not crazy and no one's getting
Yeah.
hurt. But union sets are very almost like you're in the military. It's like by the book. It's very rule oriented. There's a hierarchy. You report to this guy and this guy, and I feel like the creativity is kind of squeezed. It's bottlenecked to a point, so it feels a little bit more artificial, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And just through my experience as an actor working on independent films, I thrive in those. There's a lot more opportunity in them to for character development and for one to express themselves through the character
Mm-hmm.
as well. Now, Brandon, as we both know, shout outs to Brandon, Miles Crossman, Nate Bauer, little crew out there, working with directors and producers who can multitask with being behind the camera, being in front of it, directing everything, is crucial. I feel in the development of both an actor and a director because it shows the character, their character, so to speak, evolving. And I've learned a lot from that based on smaller sets, smaller atmospheres, and such. Now, between you and I, there's a generation gap. I'm early 40s, early 20s. So, with that being said, you grew up in the city, as far as I know, right? So with so much more advances literally in technology and so much more quote unquote to do compared to when I was your age, so to speak, as this old saying goes, how did you stay focused and determined to make this your career?
That's a great question. Um, it honestly was, I think my biggest enemy was doubt. When I was in middle school and high school, I was kind of forcing myself to pick up the camera as often as possible and produce anything, any kind of content. And I constantly wanted to remind myself that if I was going to make something, it would had to be worth the audience's time. Now that's just my own judgment. That's how I
Right.
like to judge my own creative content. And I felt like I was exposed to a lot of creative outlets. My father actually colors comic books for a living, like DC, Marvel, and all that. And that was a great opportunity for me to, I feel like, be surrounded by artists and work as often as I could.
Hmm.
But again, without, I felt like there was no money to be made as a director. Directors are, in my opinion, the hardest working to get to the place where you get paid for your content. You could be a commercial director, which is, in my opinion, maybe the most secure way to make a living as a director because you could be hired by a company, a car company, to make some commercials, and boom, you get $100,000 or maybe more if you're recognized. You're working with some serious A-level talent, but I'm not in that avenue. I might pick it up to pay the bills and support a future family, but the goal of mine is to make some excellent films that are really dynamic and, in my opinion, incredibly inspiring. I feel like I grew up with an opportunity to go to the theater a lot, movie theaters, see some pretty cool and exciting films. And I saw this movie called Godzilla 2014. I was a big fan as a young fella, and when they rebooted it, that was the best day ever. So I brought all my friends, and I think 11 of us, me included, making it 12, went to the theater, and most of them didn't really know who Godzilla was, but I was a big fan. I had a couple of DVDs at home. I begged my dad to buy me some, and this was a big important moment for me. And I think I was 14, 15 at the time, not exactly sure how old I was. And there was this scene. I remember it so clearly. It was like yesterday. I was in the theater, and there was this scene where Godzilla was getting beaten down by this big old monster. And the sound effects around the whole theater were pretty dynamic and really impactful. So it was so loud, you couldn't even hear the person beside you. And there came a point where the monster beat Godzilla down so hard that he fell down, and you thought the fight was over. And it goes quiet. Quiet for the first time. And you see Godzilla, and he starts to stand up. But there's a lot of smoke, so you can't quite see him. And his tail begins to glow blue, and it trails all the way up his spine and towards his head. As a big Godzilla fan, I knew exactly what he was doing. He was powering up his beam. But there's this humming bass that surrounded the whole theater to the point where it was shaking your seat. I looked around, and all my friends were screaming, excited. They were like, holy crap, what's in front of us? Oh my God, he's going to take him out. And just that excitement, this passion, the adrenaline I've never felt, and I've been chasing for that since, overpowered me, and I just started screaming too. And boom, he powers his laser beam, takes out the monster, and down he goes. And the audience roars, and like some of us stood up. We were freaking out. I couldn't believe it. I wanted to recreate that for my own fans and audiences. I've never felt that excited in, I would say, maybe 6 years now. I've never been overpowered by that adrenaline rush of this is really happening. And that's what I've been chasing ever since. And as a director who wants to chase that avenue, that, in my opinion, is pretty expensive, because I'm after adrenaline, which is typically leaning into action or sometimes horror. But I like to lean into horror because that's a little bit more affordable. But that requires a lot of self-sacrifice. You're putting out high-quality content that is incredibly expensive, and no one's going to really fund an indie production that's trying to chase that. I had to make 2 films. My first one costing me $6,000, and my latest one $10,000. That was out of a part-time job income. I was making maybe $500 every 2 weeks.
Still made it worse, though.
Yeah, I was working for a full year just to pay off these movies, because this was my goal. This was my aspiration, and I knew no one was going to support me. So I think if I didn't have that support circle where my father was a working artist, where my brother, who is now a mechanic, who also draws excellently, is an artist, and some of my close and best friends are artists, culinary artists, people who cook, people who paint. If I didn't have this circle of close, great friends, I think a little bit of myself would have killed that passion, because that self-doubt is so loud, that voice, it's echoing. It doesn't leave you alone. I feel like a lot of artists can relate to that, because that's what takes you out. I feel like when you reach a level, you get to a point where you hit this wall, and this is what every artist faces. It's either you put in the time, the effort, and the sweat and the pain and blood to get past that wall, or you put down your bag, put down your tools, and you walk away, and that's it. Find a new path. I have not yet given up. I have been pushing really hard past that doubt, because that's the challenge. That's the big question. Can you keep going forward? Kind of like Rocky. It's not a matter of how hard you can hit someone. It's how hard you can get hit and stand up and keep going forward.
Excellent insight. Thank you for that. That was fantastic. Now, with working on set and being behind the lens directing, tell us a little bit more about some of the challenges you face. Let's start with working on set, doing sound, doing what have you, and then we'll shift to directing.
Good question. For me, when I got started, I was really lucky. I was working on very, very few indie productions when I started out, before I really knew anyone in the industry. I made my movie, and I think I worked on 3 others. And this was over the span of a year. I worked on like 4 movies. And I didn't know what I was doing. So this is another tip I give out to as many artists as I can. If you want to know something, enable yourself to go get it.
Absolutely.
Don't ever ask a question and be like, well, I'll figure it out or push it aside. Write it down. Sometimes I'm driving and I go, I wonder how this light would look on this object. And
Mm-hmm.
honestly, jot it down. Like I have notes for this interview. I jot it down because my memory is shit. And I I need that ability to write it down to come back to it because that's just how I work. I recognize my own function and my flaw, and I defeated it by doing that. And going back to your point of working on set, I took online courses. I watched a lot of videos. I learned what to do and what not to do. That was maybe more important. And then eventually I made my first film, and a producer named Orlando Braun really was impressed, and he suggested I come help him out on a TV show called In Plain Sight. And I said, heck yeah, absolutely. And I think this was my first year out of high school. So this was my first proper film job.
Wow.
And I was a young baby boy, so I was excited. I was like, yes, this is what I'm living for. So they hired me after an interview. I was the props master for a TV show. It was like a murder reenactment type series. And that was the best thing that could have happened to me because I was exposed to this low pressure set. And I was working in an office, I would say maybe 60% of the time playing around. I was making props. I was making costumes. I was driving around. I was buying cool, weird, wacky objects. I get to laugh because I'm in the aisle picking out this weird costume where I have a bunch of knives in my cart and people are looking at me like I'm a crazy murderer, but I have to remind them that it's for a TV show. That was a lot of fun. That was definitely the best summer job that I had, and I met some amazing human beings there as well. It was my first time being exposed to passionate people who are passionate about their job and their lives. I had been working at Superstore before, and there was a lot of downers there, and that's just the nature of the job. And being exposed to that 9 to 5 mentality of which in my opinion is very defeating. It's something that really doesn't bring you up. I feel like you're part of a corporate kind of gray zone. I feel like you're not really living, in my opinion. I've been there for a year. And when I finally got to work on set, that really brought me back. I felt like I was a new person again. And I said I wanted to do this professionally. I want to take this seriously. And I met this guy named Mandeep, and he was one of their, I don't know if he was their light riggers or something. He was on the show for a while, and I talked to him, and I bonded with him pretty well because he and I have the same crazy sense of humor. And he says, if you want to work with me sometime, I'll hire you and we can just see if you're up to the task. I said, yes, please. And it was the last day of the TV series. I was just getting the last props for the last day shooting. And Mandeep, I think, wrapped a week before, and he shoots me a text. He goes, hey, I'm going out to Vancouver. Do you want to come with me and be my camera assistant? It's for a Bollywood music video. I go, yes, but the tickets were like $500. I was like, I can't afford this. I can't go. And he says, I'll pay for it as long as you're coming to work. And I was floored. I felt like weeping. I said, yes, I'll do it. And I got to go to Vancouver and work in a professional environment. And it was the most transformational point in my life where I realized this is what I wanted to do. This is important to me. It was exhausting. We worked like 20-hour days. I think that was the last day, pardon me. We worked like 14-hour days, but the last day was like 21 hours or something. It was crazy. We worked through the rain, and I didn't hate myself. I didn't hate what I was doing. I was very excited and very lucky to have worked on that. And so when I came home, I wanted to do more of that. And so today, now I work on union sets. Unfortunately, the pandemic hit us, so we don't really work, So I'm a set decorator full-time when the pandemic will be lifted. And what I do is I'm basically a handyman. I will do anything on set. I will maybe lift a chair, bring up a couch, or put up a painting. I'll set that up, maybe make some photos. I'll do anything. I've lifted like hundreds of bales of hay out of a U-Haul truck to set up for a Hallmark movie. I've worked long hours, and again, I have never really hated the experience, and it was a part of me that I feel has pushed me forward. Just being on that set has really empowered me. I think every time I'm not on set, that adrenaline high of just that passion to keep working starts to dwindle. So it's like I have a hunger for it. I have to go back. So if I'm not on set for long enough, eventually I have to go back because that hunger is there. And so I feel like it's important for anyone who wants to work in the film industry to develop that, because it's very scary to be feeling secure in where you are. And what I mean by that is if you're okay with kind of staying still and not really growing, something's wrong, because you will not grow at the speed you need to catch up with everyone. And another point to make is you will never really catch up with anyone. There's a lot of opportunities given to people that other people don't get, or maybe they're born into it and they get to leap ahead of the line. So you
Right.
have to fight against that. And I think it's really important to never really sit down and be comfortable. I'm never really comfortable where I'm at. I'm constantly working and refining and learning. There's so much out there. And now we're in 2020. Technology is booming. It is. I have almost given up on learning camera gear because I hire just smart, amazing cinematographers who
Right.
know all of this. They have 20, 30 years under their belt, and they're still learning about it. And I can't keep up with that. I have to focus on my directing and writing skills. So that is something that's really important to focus on, in my opinion, is to just get hungry for work and never be comfortable staying still, I would
Oh,
say.
absolutely. And also, I've worked on the sets for In Plain Sight as well. I acted on a few different episodes for that as well. I totally hear you on the wholesomeness of the cast and crew. And shout outs to all cast and crews, actors, everyone
Yes.
involved in the film process. I believe it's human nature, it's inclination to think that it's hurry up and wait, and there's just a lot of sitting around. It's a lot of long days. It's a lot of long hours. It's a lot of patience, is what it is. So it's not all a bed of roses, as they say. It's actually a lot of work that can become one's passion if they let it, if that
Hmm.
makes sense. So I totally hear you on that, and thank you for elaborating on that whole experience and how the experience is evolving you as both crew and both as director, producer, and so on and so forth. So that's fantastic, Troy. I really appreciate that. Now, we were talking about the contrast between the two. Now, you have a film, June 19th,
Hmm.
just like you. Tell us about that, what the experiences was like filming that.
That was a very fun adventure. I feel like every time I make a movie, I kick my ass harder and harder. I sometimes can be very hard on myself because that passion to do very well, and I'm also self-conscious of how people see me when I'm working, because I want to put on the image that I know what I'm doing. But most of the time, honestly, with all the plans I put into motion, with all the excellent crew I have around me, and with
Yes.
this passion inside, I'm winging it. I, I, I'm still a green director. I'm still learning. I'm still talking to people who have 20, 30 years under their belt, who know the routine, who know what they're talking about. And I'm forgetting all these basic skills that I need to be memorizing while I'm in front of these people. Sometimes I forget the line that I wrote over the span of a year because it's just in the heat of the moment, uh, where that it hits you and you completely drop everything you put together.
Is it kind of like the same approach with what you were mentioning some moment ago about the technology and, you know, not so much memorizing how to use all the technology, but just kind of going along and learn as you go kind of scenario? Yeah.
Exactly. I think what's really important for me is if I don't know something, I'll try to learn it. And if I can't learn it, or if I can't find a way to get an answer, I need to bring someone on my team who has the knowledge to do that. Like there was a stunt scene, there was a fight scene in my movie, and I knew I was not going to be able to pull off the results that I wanted because it's just a lack of experience. And I knew that if I wanted to make this an exciting scene, I needed energy. And in order to really sell an action scene, you need speed, momentum, and, in my opinion, some really brutality. So I brought in a stunt coordinator, Derek Pang. Excellent human being. I love that guy. And he came on, and I met him at a coffee shop, and I told him all my plans. I think he's actually a martial arts teacher, and he gave me some ideas on what we would do. So when we came to the shooting, it was me, Mandeep, and Derek, and I brought in the actors, and this is what I did. This was very scary. I said to Mandeep, I'm going to tell you guys what I want, and I'm going to let you guys figure this out. And I'll listen in, and I'll chime in, but really this is a lot to handle. So I walked him through the whole sequence. It was about, I think, a 50-second sequence. They had to go in one room and fight, and then they had to somehow get into another room, then get into a balcony where one character would get shot. And that's a lot. You have to sell every action. You need to give a purpose as to why they're going to that place. And the audience is constantly testing you to see if you're up to the task. So I tell them, and this is what happens. Okay. And then Mandeep starts choreographing these guys. Derek starts getting these guys to pretend to punch each other. They're staging where they're going. The actors start going at it, and I'm on the bed. We were in a bedroom, and there was another room nearby just watching us. And there's like 6 or 7 things going on. There's crew coming in and out of the room. Cheryl, my assistant director, was coming in, tapping her watch, checking in, making sure we have everything done. It's a swarm of people going on. There's so many events happening that I am not aware of, and I have to keep calm, cool, and collected. And when everyone stops and the dust resolves and gets out of the way, and they all look at you, you are the one that has to give the green light as to, are we ready to shoot? And that was scary. I really had to lend my heart out to someone else and say, please take care of this. And I had to give a lot of trust to my casting crew that they knew what they were doing, because I hand selected these guys and I brought them on with the knowledge that they did know what they were doing. And we shot the scene and we got it. We got everything. We did such a good job that we got the entire fight scene in one night. And we were filming nights, and that was incredibly difficult. So for some crew, they had day jobs. So we would film, they go to work, then they come film again, then they go to work. Greg, he was one of our actors. He was, I think, a transport lead for a Hallmark. So he would work 14 hours and come to work on a night shift. And that dude worked hard. He was one of the lead cops, so he had fight scenes. So I couldn't believe how much passion was on my set that these guys gave a shit. You know, it was amazing. And I feel like being vulnerable like that is important in moments like that, because if I was power hungry in the way that I wanted control, I wanted to guide everything, I wanted that security of, okay, you're doing what I want.
Yeah.
We were
A lot of eyes there, yeah. That's not a team mentality. Absolutely. Troy, you're an entrepreneur. You have Prismatic Pictures, your brainchild, your film company. How does it feel to be a CEO? How does that now put that title, if you will, in the mix versus director versus being on set? Tell me what that's like.
It feels really good. I think I now feel like I have this home to come back to in my creative department, where I feel like without this company, I was kind of throwing my art into the air and seeing if it would stick on whatever was out there. I had no idea where I was going to throw my films into. And that's still something I'm struggling with, because film festivals are now kind of transforming because everyone's going onto the streaming platforms. So I had to figure that all out. But I feel like owning a company enables me to open up another avenue of income, as well as making a name for myself, because I have a brand that represents me. And I think without a brand, you don't really have something that people can think of when they think, oh, Troy Dawes. Oh, that stinky guy, he has this company. That's pretty cool. And without it, I feel like I'm just throwing a film into nothingness. And it's not that you need one. For me, I just wanted that sense of security because I'm a planner at heart. I feel like without a roadmap, I have nowhere to go. And that's just me. Some people are good at just going with the flow. I'm definitely a guy who likes to plan for the first year and then shoot in a week the next.
Mhm.
Having the company has also enabled me to be taken more seriously. Before I would just say my company's Troy's Films. I have a YouTube channel called that, and there's this ounce of he's still a new greenlit director, or he's not even really working director. He's making videos and we're paying him, but there's nothing behind it, right? It's just a local filmmaker, as you would call it. I feel like once you get that icon, that identity, you are now recognized. And I feel like I can also make some merch, or if I end up making more projects with other filmmakers, I can put my logo and my brand and my face into these films and kind of spread out my identity and hopefully grab the attention of someone who has real talent, someone in Hollywood if possible. But that's not really the end goal. The end goal is to have an identity that people can think of. It's not that my name doesn't matter. It's that there's so many other directors and so many other projects and production companies that you need something like a torch that will shine in the darkness, because if you have your small little dinky lights, your little flicker light or whatever, no one's going to see you because
It's something that'll differentiate you from the rest of the pack as well. Something that's going to really stand out. No, I hear that completely, and I like the beacon of light reference metaphor. That totally is accurate with not only being with an entrepreneur, being an actor. I feel the same way being an actor, musician, model, everything that I do. I feel the exact same way. There has to be room for growth. There has to be a learning curve, but there can't be disappointment, frustration, because it is all part of the process. Some of those moments where one feels they might falter, there's an opportunity waiting around the corner out of the ashes of that. So with directing videos as well, you'd mentioned that, and you worked with Sleepless. Sleepless, shout out to the boys in Sleepless.
Oh yeah.
Brad, Bo, John. I actually performed with them at a concert when I met them was in September 2018. And while I was doing research for the broadcast today, I had been familiar with you directing the video, didn't know you at the time, and now I do. So how is that different or similar? So not really two parts, it's really one or the other. How is it different or similar than directing a film? As that being a music video, how different is it, or the same?
I would say it's in vein of working on a commercial where you are reporting to someone else and that person has their hands in the bank or the budget. What's important is you're making art for these guys, but they hired you because they love your eye. I think I was lucky enough to be hired by those guys because I was still a green director. And funnily enough, I had made my first film called Face Your Fears, and I rented out the Dramatic Arts Center. And I think the owner was Justin, and Justin was their band manager. And he goes, "Troy, that was a great film. That was like legit," because he knew I had nothing. It was a one-man show. I had some friends help me film it, but I was every department, and I had rented out a house for a month to shoot the movie, and it was a big challenge. And he was very interested in seeing me produce a music video for these guys. And they had a small budget. They had $200 to give me. So I had to get creative. So what I thought was, why don't we rent out the theater? Justin owns the theater. So I went home and I looked up some YouTube clips that we could project on the background. And I wanted it to be very colorful. I asked these guys what their song meant, and I tried to translate it into their video. Justin also had costumes because they put on plays there. So I brought them down into the wardrobe and I said, let's pick out some costumes that meet the conditions of what this song is trying to say. So it was definitely me kind of just, again, winging it because I had to figure out and translate what these guys were trying to project into their audience, but they wanted it through my lens, through my eye, and I had to understand that deeply. And so I had to put this all together, and I ended up sending it to them, and they loved it. But it's scary because you are taking, again, someone else's heart, and they're asking you to be careful with it. And it doesn't so much matter about how much they're paying you at that time. It's, are you going to deliver with very few resources? I think that's a really important skill to develop. A lot of filmmakers, or I would say working artists, don't really like to work on projects with small budgets or sometimes indie productions because they feel like their skill is above it. I really think, and I would like to challenge the viewers to take on the challenge of working with such few resources. I've done that for many years. I think what's important is you are bringing the best out of such little to work with. I have worked on 2 films of my own, and I had just enough money to get what I needed. If you're able to do that and bring out some quality results, you're going to get hired again and again, and your budget's going to rise, but slowly, with increments. If those guys came back again, maybe they'll throw $1,000 at me. That's still not a lot, but that's something that I could use. Maybe I could bring on some decent crew. Maybe I could rent out a car or something. You can get creative with it with such few resources, and I think some excellent things can come out of that.
What do you think, or what do you feel, the mission statement for Prismatic Pictures, your film company, what would that sound like?
I would say we're looking to promote local filmmakers for an affordable price. I am looking to keep my business small and local for the goal that I want to bring the community and uplift them, but I am looking for those who are serious. I want to take the younger generation who gives a shit, and I want them to have an audience. I want to develop my own audience big enough to the point where I can bring in some new green directors who I recognize have a talent and an eye as well, and share my audience with them. Kind of like how Elijah Wood is right now with his business, where he is going out and he's bringing in directors who pitch certain films to him. The riches are in the niches. That's what I heard from a great filmmaker. So they have this very specific type of film that they're looking for, and they hire these guys, and Elijah funds their films. And I would like to have some sort of co-directing program, or maybe co-writing, some sort of program where I can enable these new directors that are taking this seriously, because I feel like it's really, really hard for the younger generation to really pick it up and go. I think in this generation in 2020, anyone can get a camera and film a movie and make it reasonable, but I feel like it's so hard to make a name for yourself now because there's so much content. It's unbelievable. Like Netflix has so much content going on right now that it's almost like there's a gate that you can't get through because there's a huge lineup that you have to get through. You might have to wait 5-10 years to get through that line just for you to get in that Netflix show for maybe 2-3 months. It's tough, and I want to enable this community to give them that chance. And if we can't get on Netflix, then we'll make our own thing.
I was just going to say, if that was part of the plan, that's fantastic. That's really thinking ahead of the curve, is what that is. Now, the ideal actor, what does that look like to you? What traits make an actor stand out? Work ethic, what would it be?
That's such a good question. I'm going to call out my favorite actor, who was the lead actor for Just Like You, Liam Fazakherly, that handsome hunk of a man. Oh my word, he was so talented. So he and I had met in Vancouver through that music video that Mandeep brought me out to work on. And what was amazing was he was one of the lead actors in the musician's music video, and he and I got along. We chatted, and he knew I was from Winnipeg, and before we left, I said, if we work again in the future, I'd love to. So 2 years go by, and I wrote the script, and I said, Liam, I'll pay and fly you out here if you take this seriously. And he did. And I learned that he was a bit of a method actor. So he studied for months and months, and we called and had so many late night discussions. And what to me really stood out initially was he gave a shit. He put in the time. He put in the hours. He would send me clips of him recording himself just saying these lines, or him outside trying to reenact some scenes, or him just putting on certain voices and tones and saying, is this what you're looking for? Someone who really was trying to deliver, you know, like, oh, I couldn't believe it. I was so enthralled by it. And so when he finally came to Winnipeg, we had a tight schedule. We had 6 days to film, and we were filming all at night. And Liam didn't get a chance to kind of fix his internal clock because he had come from Vancouver, and he came midday, so he had to sleep right away because we were filming that night. And so I dropped him off, and we got to talk. And through that, I learned that he was very, very committed to this project because he felt like this was an opportunity to show everyone at Vancouver and Winnipeg that he was serious. He was a serious actor. And he was very passionate about acting, not for the credibility or for the fame, but that he could entertain people. That spoke to him deeply, and that spoke to me as well, because that's how I grew up, ended up picking up a camera, and that's what I loved. I loved to entertain my audience. So when we got on set, we started working, the second thing that I picked up was he listened. He listened. There's so many crew and producers and actors that I've worked with and gone past through my life, and you'd be shocked at how many of them don't really listen. They might hear what you're saying, but they're not listening to the words and not really putting any power into them. Liam would sit there and he'd ask questions. He would break it apart so he could actually get it. Or if he didn't get it, he would like to step aside with me and just be like, I didn't really get that. Could you elaborate on that? And I think that's incredibly important for not just me, but for him, because now he knows what he's doing. If you know what you're doing, you are empowered by it and you're more confident. And he was confident that entire time. There's very few times where I brought him aside or he brought me aside and we were like, how are you doing? Are you still with me? Are we good? Is there anything going wrong? And we would constantly affirm each other and say, you're doing great, you know. And I think the last thing that I picked up was when we were on this certain day, it was the 4th day of shooting. We had this scene where he was playing as a character named Nathan Wren, who's a big, bad, nasty guy. And he was stalking this young woman online, and he was developing this identity where he thought he was in this relationship with this girl. He was following her for months. He was checking in on her Facebook page, and eventually he imagined he was with this woman. And he went out to this comedy club to meet her, and she couldn't recognize him. She had no idea who he was, and that broke his heart. So he went home and texted her to kind of like confirm if this was true. He says, hey, it was great meeting you last night. Is this something we could continue? And she goes, who are you? I have a boyfriend. And funny as that was, I wanted to record his reaction. And Liam and I talked about it, and we said, I think this guy would take this super seriously. Like, this would be very personal for him. And I asked, how would you react if a girl responded to you like, who are you? Do you exist? And he says, that would break my heart. I would break down and cry. And so on the day, we had this monitor, and we were looking at his reaction, his face, looking at the monitor, and I asked him, I would like to see you cry. And I have worked with a lot of actors, and I've never really seen one of them genuinely break down. I've never seen anyone open up. A term that I heard from another director that I love is, it's really hard to ask an actor to get emotionally naked. I asked him to get emotionally naked on camera in front of a big crew. So what I did was I had everyone but me, the sound guy, and the cameraman in the room. So I had everyone leave. I said, Liam, the clock is off. Take as long as you need. I want to see you cry. I'll do whatever you need. and it took him maybe 10 minutes, and he wept. He had that perfect Hollywood tear, and he cried. And so after we got the scene, it was a one shot. It was beautiful. I think the next day we filmed, and then when we all wrapped, I drove him to the airport to say goodbye, and we were talking. And I said, man, that was gorgeous. I've never worked with an actor who actually did that for me. And he says, well, that was really hard for me. I said, why was that hard for you? He goes, well, my sister had committed suicide, I think like 3 or 4 years ago. And he used the memory and that experience to really open up. And I was blown away. I felt like crying in that moment because he basically broke his heart in front of a camera and in front of me. And I couldn't believe that he would do that for my dumb fucking movie. Sorry. I was so astounded. And I was like, this guy actually cares. He's willing to give his all to show this audience that this character is a real human being. And those 3 conditions, I think, prove to me that he is capable of reaching some serious talent. I think he is a legitimate working actor, and I hope to see him work again. I would pay him work.
The audience will be able to tell that, just to add to that, if it's fabricated. I myself, with acting, channel emotions dependent on what's being asked of the character. Speaking of method actors, Daniel Day-Lewis is one of my favorites. There's a reason why he's won 3 Oscars based on his method acting. And that's phenomenal that you're looking, but I'm not surprised, but it's phenomenal that you're looking for those qualities in an actor, because you're looking for someone like-minded, but at the same time using their skills to really focus on what the bigger picture is, which is the end game, the plot of the film, and how it's going to resonate with the audience. Now, with Jaguar, your newest project, I had the honor, thank you very much, Troy, for being a screenwriting consultant for this film. Tell us about that, and also tell us about your experience going down to Brandon for props, if you will, for the film.
That's a great question. So we actually gave it a new name because we went through some revisions. It's called Phoenix Rising. That is my next film that we're working on. That is the first film that I've made and is now greenlit. I've never worked on a film of my own where someone else took on the financial responsibility and took on the risk of enabling me to make this excellent film. So going back to one of your, I believe, first questions, you were asking me, how do I come up with my ideas? And being affected by what's ever going on in my life, whatever's happening in that year definitely influences me with the type of content I make. And my grandfather, Gordon Love, had passed away in 2020, early in the year. He was an artist as well as a airframe mechanic. And when he passed away, that absolutely broke my heart. My mom, I remember the day. I came downstairs to bug my dad. My dad works from home and he's in his basement. And my mom was down there and she was looking at her phone and she was very quiet. I came to just bug my dad, bang on his head and say hello. And she turns to me and she goes, and she knew that I was going to get upset. She hesitated and she turned around and she goes, Troy, your grandfather passed away. And I can't even explain how it affected me. It was a rainbow of emotions, and it all happened in about 2 seconds, where I went from I don't believe you to no way to F you to is this real? It just going through all of this all at once, and then I just broke down. I just cried and ran out. I sat on the couch, cried for quite some time, and sorry, my phone's getting low on battery. All I could think at the time was, I wish I was there for him. I wish I could have said goodbye one more time. I wish I could have just held his hand as he was going, just something. And constant doubt flushed over me, constant just self-deprecating thoughts, just like, you sack of shit, you could have done something. And it took me a really long time to get over that. And eventually after the funeral, and I got over the initial feelings I felt like I still needed to say goodbye to him in the way us artists would. And
Yes.
I needed to produce something that would honor his name. And this wasn't for anyone. This wasn't for necessarily even him. This was my way of saying thank you for everything. I love you more than anything. I hope you have a safe, healthy journey to wherever you're going. And I wanted to write something about his own passions. And one of those passions was he was an airframe mechanic. And during this time, he worked, I think, at the tail end of World War II. And I wanted to make an airplane film. Now, right off the bat, I was 21. How the hell are you going to make an airplane film? No one's going to greenlit this. No one's going to enable this. This is a project that is beyond your dreams. But I had a good friend. I had one of my best friends, Jesse Posthumus, who was a working airframe mechanic and a childhood friend of mine. And I pitched it to him. And he knew my grandfather passed away, and he knew how important he was in my life. And Jesse says, well, I got a few friends. I could see if I could ask around to find some vintage planes and we could come up with something. So he called a few friends, and he called one of his friends at this this museum in Brandon. And it was called the Air Training Commonwealth Program or something. I'm totally butchering it. But they had some vintage planes from the 1940s, and the museum loved the idea of making a film surrounding these planes. It didn't even have to be historical, just using their planes for a movie. And I asked him a few questions just to make sure if he wasn't bugging me or messing with me, and we both realized that this could be real. So I sat down and I started writing the script. It started off as Jaguar, and I kind of had an idea. I wanted the film to be kind of a fatherly relationship where there was these two pilots in this vintage plane during the 1942, and there was a Canada-wide program put together by the Americans and the Canadians where they had built over 600 air bases and enlisted 191,000 pilots to go serve and save people during the war in World War II. And the program was called the Commonwealth Air Training Program. And this was a big moment in Canadian history. And they built so many planes. And this was a big pivotal point in time. And I felt like this was a great idea. This is how we could tell this story. So I wrote it together. Jesse and I bounced off each other. He was I guess the historian, so he knew more about the time and the planes and the logistics, and I knew how to tell the story and how to make the film. So we were definitely collaborating a lot. And eventually I reached out to you to help me write some lines of dialogue. And then I realized this was never really going to be fully realized unless we got someone serious to help us produce this. And so we reached out to Miles through you, and he loved the idea. And so we were greenlit, and I couldn't believe it. And I knew I had to make the script a lot better. We had to refine it, and we did. And we ended up changing a lot, and it's an amazing story now. And we named it Phoenix Rising, and it's going to be a 10-minute short, and we're going to be filming it in June in 2021, where these two pilots are in this Harvard T6, and they're practicing for an aerial exam, and they find a German enemy plane in their area, and they have to try to stop it and prevent it from escaping. And so we're hoping that CBC picks this up. We're hoping that we were even talking about sending this to Canadian museums all around, where they would put it on their display TVs, and they would play it on loop. And we were thinking of some sort of subscription base where they would pay every year to use the video. So that would have been some real money that we could have gotten off it. So
that's fantastic. I was just going to add to that. That's a fascinating concept, and it brings more relevancy in an ongoing world of technology to facilities like museums, and still being able to utilize the technology based on modern day recognition for museums, albeit Phoenix. rising, right? So that's amazing that you came down to that, and that's a great story of inspiration as well. So we're going to finish up with the seven. They're rapid fire questions, and I'm going to go get right to it. Which director would be you wanting to work with on your dream project? One
Peter
director.
Jackson.
Peter Jackson.
Hands down.
Hunting or fishing?
Fishing.
Flying cars. Will it happen in our lifetime?
Yes, I think so.
Favorite band and musician and why?
Riot, because I love rock and roll secretly.
Cliff diving or spelunking?
Spelunking.
Nice. But the fact that you know what spelunking is and that you chose spelunking, that's fantastic. Okay, if you were to learn a new language, what would it be?
I was actually looking to learn a new language because my mother teaches French. I was going to learn Chinese.
Nice. All right. That was it? You said Chinese, right?
Yes. I was trying to think if there was another one. Maybe Spanish. I failed at Spanish in high school. So maybe I'll try it again.
And will you be back on RoseNthorn Talk?
I'd love to. I would love to.
Thank you. Right answer. Troy, it was amazing having you. It was amazing collaborating with you on Phoenix Rising. I can't wait for that to come out. You're focused, you're inspiring, the insight that you have, and I'm not going to say because of a generational age gap, but it's refreshing to see someone at your age, in your age category, in your age demographic, that that has a vision like this, and as they say, inspiring others, and keep working at it. You know how this goes, and it's going to channel so many resources and opportunities for you. And it was a true pleasure to have you on RoseNthorn Talk episode 2.
Thank you. I would love to come back again. I did have a point. I think I read some comments. Would we be open to reading a few and maybe responding?
We should have a minute or two because we have the hour. So if you want to pick one in particular and just address it real quick, and then if a countdown starts, I'll let you know.
Sounds good. Just gonna see if anyone's still around. Hi, Mandeep. He's saying hello. I have been blessed with a team of people that convince me that I have a purpose and a story that is unique and will, God willing, help some people avoid the downfalls that could have been avoided. That's a great point, Marco. I definitely think if you're surrounded by people who are willing to support you, that you should stay with that team. I would say always reach back to the people who are closest to you and work with them. Build some lifelong partners. I definitely have a few of those. I'm looking to build that web larger and larger every day. I am definitely one that likes to bring back familiar faces. And if you are able to create stories that will help people, keep at it. Keep at it, man.
Absolutely.
Like, cool at MTYP, I was a set decorator, and you know what you will be doing as it comes along. Have made fake trees so real that someone wanted to water it, painted a set to look like 40-year-old. Me and you, Aaron. Oh yeah, I've been a lead greens on a few films. If you don't know what a greens department is, that is basically, sorry, my phone was getting low.
That's good.
You work with plants and trees and flowers, and I worked on a Hallmark where I was the lead greens, where I got a lot of pine trees for a Christmas movie. And yeah, I was near downtown, near the Red River College, and I had to set up all these trees. And we actually had homeless people sleeping in the bundles of these trees because it was the only warm thing down in the city. So yeah, you get to see some interesting things on set. And I would definitely not recommend sleeping in a pine tree, as it stings. It does not feel good.
We got 10 seconds, Troy. Again, thank you for going through those comments as well. Thank you for the audience for watching.